Welcome to everyone today at today's Ask the Expert, and thank you, Sam, so much for coming in and presenting to us. We're all really looking forward to hearing all about it. So I'm just quickly going to show something on the screen for everyone. So quickly, it's never going to be quick. So thank you everyone for coming along, and please feel free to ask any questions. So Sam, I'll start. Could you just explain the role of a doula in a wider sense, and exactly what it is you do and your connection to Mummy Star? Thank you.
Yeah, of course I can. So there are two sort of types of doula that I am more familiar with, and there are others as well, and I might touch on those later. But the main type are the birthing doula and a postnatal doula. And birth doulas have been sort of widely known about, I would say, for probably the last 20 or so years, when that was the sort of first accepted course that sort of started in terms of training. And postnatal doulas have been a sort of new development from that, I'd say in the last 10 years. And a lot of the sort of more older doulas that have been doing postnatal work in the big cities like London, they have been working for quite some time. I would say, yeah, 10 years or so. But essentially, a doula is somebody who will support parents and birthing people through the birth process and now the postnatal process in a very non-medical way. So it is really a very holistic support, but it's very tailored and unique to whatever the parents, client, families need. And it can range from practical support, emotional support, it's an all-round nurturing support, and that can include lots of different sort of things in terms of nourishing foods, postnatal massage, hypnobirthing, breastfeeding support, baby wearing support, sleep support for you and babies and children. I mean, the list is pretty endless, but it essentially is having a non-judgmental, listening, reassuring support there through what can be a really challenging time as a woman transitions from a woman to a mother, or to a mother of more children. It just, depends on their circumstances. It's also something that I think recently I've been very aware of people feeling that it's only really exclusive support for people that can afford it. And that is something that we as a doula community are really passionate about changing that message, because in Eastern cultures and a lot of other countries, the doula support is already ingrained in their postpartum support and birthing support, because their families are much more geographically closer. So they have that nucleus already there. And it is a tradition for them to be able to support their daughter, granddaughter, sister, aunt, whoever at that time, and celebrate them and celebrate the birth of their baby, and actually celebrate their bodies for doing the birth and for growing the child. But nowadays we're all much more separated from our families, and in the Western world we've never really worked like that anyway. It's been much more of a personal situation as to whether you're close with your families or not. And I've had ranges of clients who have had parents and in-laws checking in and being very heavily involved and supportive, as well as those who have got parents on the other side of the world or no family to speak of. So, you know, that's not a reason to need the support or not need the support. Every woman is fundamentally should fundamentally be allowed that time to recover, should be allowed that extra support, because it takes a village and no one should be doing it alone. And for me, I came to this line of work, because it doesn't feel like a job for me, because well, I had and have had several breast cancer diagnoses, and I am living with secondary cancer now, and on permanent treatment. But my first diagnosis was when I was really young, and I was 26, and I was so worried about my fertility and how that would be affected by my treatment. And a few years later, after all my treatment had finished and I had then met my now husband, I was allowed to come off tamoxifen and try for a baby after 3 months. And we fell pregnant really quickly. But that was amazing. But there was so much that was part of my pregnancy that a lot of my peers weren't experiencing. And I found that really challenging. And then a few months after she was born, I had a secondary diagnosis, and that was a completely different ball game to having had it prior to children. So there were an awful lot of things that were coming up for me, and complications and things that I didn't have anybody else to talk to about, and that I really struggled with, because I am a chatter and I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I was blogging as well, but there wasn't a great community of young mums who had gone through what I had gone through to get where I'd gotten and to go through all of that. And when my sister then found out she was pregnant with her third baby, I had by that point had a third diagnosis and a double mastectomy, further treatment. And her husband was abroad working, so I had had a C-section with my baby, and I said I would be very happy to be her birthing partner. And she had a doula, birthing doula, who I met in the hospital. And it was one of those situations where we were so busy chatting at one point that I literally got screamed at by my sister saying, "Could you please just focus on me for a minute?" And it was the real turning point for me, because I suddenly realized that this was something really positive I could do with all of my experience by supporting other women specifically who may have gone through a chronic illness or breast cancer or any type of cancer, or, you know, ongoing treatment, that had that depth of not complication, but those other complexities that happen. And it is such a huge transitory, life-changing moment becoming a parent anyway, that having a deeper empathy and a bigger understanding of the wider picture and what some women might actually also be going through and experiencing was something that really drove me to then doing the Doula UK course. And it was while doing that course that I realized that there was a huge overlap with my passion about women taking time and investing in a space for themselves to recover post treatment, specifically, but also for themselves. And that tied in beautifully with the fact that women really do need to take this time and space to heal, reflect, and bond after childbirth, rather than, you know, rushing back to work or feeling under, you know, that cultural pressure to be busy, and that rest is something that is selfish and that we shouldn't really be doing as much of, unless there is another, outstanding reason. But it is an incredible honor to be able to support families and women specifically through this hugely life-changing and often challenging time, and really give them that space to feel empowered. That it's not always straightforward. Breastfeeding is a huge topic, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit, but it's not easy, and there is that belief in society that it should just be something that can be quite straightforward, and it isn't. And that healing between body and mind is what really gives us that overall well-being and health investment. And if we as parents and as new mothers are pouring from an empty cup, no wonder people are getting exhausted, suffering with postnatal depression, post-traumatic stress, and feeling lonely and isolated and very vulnerable.
Thanks, Sam. That's great. Thank you. I'll pass over to Jenny now for the next question.
Jenny, you're muted. It's usually me that does that. Don't worry.
Sorry about that. So you focus, it seems, on your work as a postnatal or fourth trimester doula. And we typically talk about first, second, third trimester in pregnancy. Perhaps not so much fourth trimester. Maybe some people might not even have heard of the fourth trimester. So why do you think it's so important that we acknowledge that fourth trimester for mums and families?
So the fourth trimester has also become a bit of a sort of catchphrase as well over the last few years, and it's not without value, because women who are but any type of birthing woman has gone through a huge physical shift, and that those first 3 months are a pivotal time for any recovery, bonding, healing processes, and a time for really rebuilding the strength as well. It doesn't matter, it's regardless of what type of labor a parent may have had, whether it's a natural vaginal birth or a C-section, whether there's been trauma, whether it's been fairly straightforward. Those first 3 months are key for your body to recover and regain strength, and for baby as well, because when a baby is born, so is a mother. And so that readjustment, that transition is really vital to honor that. And as I was saying earlier, with how different cultures will approach that time and the birthing process, it's also relative to this. In Thailand and other cultures, they have a lying in period, and that is the first 40 days. And there's a brilliant book written called by Heng U, who I've actually got her book here because it is like my Bible, called The First 40 Days. And it is drawing on a lot of the Eastern culture in terms of their traditions, their rituals, the sorts of foods and nurturing things that they will do for a woman who has just birthed and is entering into this really kind of pivotal time. There's also a book called The Golden Month, which is also about how we can support ourselves and not feel ashamed to ask for external support within our communities, our families, and society. Because breastfeeding, for example, is not something that you're going to learn straight away overnight, and it needs to be approached with as much calm and relaxation as possible. And the hormone oxytocin is something that is very present in the birthing process, as is adrenaline. But having that balance, like a seesaw, is what is fundamental to having a calmer birth. And hypnotherapists, hypnobirthing specialists, practitioners will often talk about that in their courses for any antenatal support. And it is absolutely fascinating what our bodies go through on a chemical level during the birthing process. And so after that, of course, things are still going to be happening, and our milk will be coming in, and our bodies will be healing after our major organs have been moved into various, other bits of our anatomy. I say that, I mean obviously our torso, but that needs to come back. It needs to gravitate back to where it is rightfully meant to be. And so again, in other cultures, the bone closing massage is a absolutely stunning type of postnatal massage, and I've also trained in that, where they very much focus on the ritualistic process of bringing the hips and the pelvis back into alignment and really supporting that and rocking the body on the floor with a rebozo shawl. It's a South American tribal custom that they have used for eons, and it is a much more wholesome whole body recovery rather than just sort of being in your home or even in a hospital environment, which are all valued. But on a holistic level, there is so much more depth to that can bring so much more release, so much more healing, and make that sanctuary space a really nurturing, nourishing, memorable time for those first few months. And in terms of, we all expect and adore that, nourishing, nurturing that we get from friends and family. But sometimes with that can come a bit of judging, a slight sense of pressure, expectation. As doulas, we are obviously very sensitive to that and to the family relationships, but we are completely non-judgmental. So having somebody there who can help guide, reassure, and give that time to really embrace those first 3 months and beyond. There is now a lot of chat about there being 5th trimesters, 6th trimesters, 7th trimesters, because you're always postnatal. Once you've had a baby, your body moves into and shifts into a postnatal capacity. So I think it's also about bringing more awareness to how important and fundamental that time can be if respected and really invested in. And that rest is so important to every woman who is then dealing with sleepless nights and getting to know this new life that they've brought into the world and being celebrated, and giving the body a true time to heal. So that is, the 4th trimester, essentially.
Thanks, Sam. That was really, really helpful. Thank you. So my question is, when a diagnosis of cancer is received during or after pregnancy, the impact is profound in how it can impact what someone would normally expect. How could the role of a postnatal doula help support this?
So this is something I feel really passionately about, having been on both sides of the coin. And there is a lot of focus on mum at this time, and also on baby. So there are so many things that a doula can bring to this sort of situation, but fundamentally being part of that team around them is critical. They will again be a non-judgmental sounding board. Signposting is something that we all have our areas of specialism in, and being able to build up and help build up that support. You know, we're not medically trained, we don't, and you know, it's not about having the answers, but it's about being able to support a family practically and emotionally through an already quite challenging time. So some of the practical things that we might do is stock the freezer with really healthy, nurturing, homemade food for the whole family. If there are loads of appointments that are happening and it's just full on, you know, I call it the sort of excavation period, where, you know, we're trying to kind of find out what the diagnosis really is, and putting all of those pieces together. It can be unbelievably frustrating, really stressful, and a patient can feel incredibly vulnerable. It can be really frustrating, and being able to do the mundane, making a cup of tea, can just feel like the most important thing in the world, and just sitting and listening and being present in the moment for whatever they need at that point. Cry, scream, shout, yell. I think being part of the, you know, the wider team is really important as well, because it's the repetitiveness of these conversations that can be really draining as well. And having to repeat things to loads of different people, whether they be specialists or friends and family, can get really exhausting. So it's another spokesperson, it's another person who you don't have to keep talking to all the time, but is naturally part of the communication, and can help really access from lots of visitors and friends. Just be there to jump in if needed in a really kind and loving way, but just taking the pressure off, essentially. I also go to appointments with clients and families to be that, you know, so that they don't have to keep repeating conversations sometimes, and to be that other set of ears to help with the download, the offload, the trying to make sense of it all. I've done a few things where it's been really quite intense, and just knowing that there is somebody on side who can hold that space but not be as emotionally attached as maybe family partners might be, where there is going to be even more emotion, more questions. It's just about being able to be that permanent source of strength and reliability. So yeah, helping on school run, helping with lifts, taking to appointments, stocking the freezer, familiarizing, you know, ourselves with the key family members, and then just sort of keeping an eye on how they might be able to find some self-care, and being able to offer that space for that as well, with massage, mindfulness, meditation, visualizations, really kind of calm times, taking the baby, having the baby on them, on the doula if mummy can't, breastfeeding support, being there to do mindful breastfeeding, which is something that I am a peer supporter in. And every doula will have something unique to offer. They, you know, we all specialize in different areas, we've all done different courses, and so it is that opportunity to bring somebody else into the fold who you really click with, and to sort of think about what you are going to need as a family, as a patient, as a parent, as a mother. What are you looking for? If it's just somebody that's going to be there to listen, that's fine. But if you need more support on a practical level, there'll be doulas that will offer that, and there'll be more doulas that might offer more of the sort of specialized things like hypnobirthing and massage. But we all have something, and it's a real chemistry, because you're being brought into a very special family nucleus, and we totally honor and respect that, and there has to be a heck of a lot of trust that goes with that. So we are all fully aware of, you know, what we're being invited into and what we're being asked to do. And so with that comes a huge amount of patience and, you know, love, and feeling passionate about the reasons, and those reasons are specific to each and every client. And just, you know, what is it that that client needs each day, because it changes all the time. And so we'll arrive and that day and will be different from the day before. And sometimes sessions will just be sitting on the sofa and listening and making tea and drinking hot tea, rather than having a quick conversation that's can often be unfinished and the cup of tea, it goes cold. Those rituals, those little pockets of sanity are so important to not just, you know, women who are going through a diagnosis as well as a new baby or a pregnancy, but to every parent who is, you know, entering that transition again of family life changing and being a family of 2 to 3 to 4 and subsequent. There's going to be a different dynamic every time, and giving that some space to breathe and honor is really valued, is really important.
Can I just ask a question quickly? I'm intrigued as to why, you know, perhaps we aren't honouring that time as women afterwards. And where do you think that that almost pressure does come from as women to sort of get back to that school run, be that mum that's given birth and he's back in that playground sort of the day after or 2 days after? Because I know I've definitely seen that and felt that pressure as a new mum myself.
Yeah, I think we all have, and that's it. It's cultural, isn't it, really? I think just from where I've been standing and the jobs that I have done in the past, and then being so poorly and then feeling like I had to go back to work, and those, you know, real kind of life-changing decisions that we have to make because our priorities change so much. I think women have done so well in terms of coming up and taking on these incredible careers and having it all, but we can't have it all, and our bodies are incredibly different from the male body. So therefore there's been, I think, a little oversight somewhere along the line where we thought that, you know, being able to work in and be busy is a good thing. You know, we should be like, oh, you're so amazing, you're doing it all. It's changing the language, and it's just reframing it a little bit now, because I think it, you know, I'm not for 1 second saying it's not brilliant that women are doing the hard stuff, you know, or the really big jobs. We need that. We really do. And I'm not a feminist, but I really do feel that women have a massive capacity to be able to do just as well as men. But our bodies are built differently, and we as mothers need to carve out that time as a given when we have started our families, and respect that time and make it a priority. I think we just, those conversations around rest and recovery are changing. They really are. And there's a mountain of research and books that are written. And I feel like sometimes I have a library's worth, but the education around it is changing for the better, but it's a very slow process. And I think we overlook the benefit of rest as a whole. I think we forget how stress can affect our bodies nowadays as well. And it's usually not just one thing with stress, it's other things. But our health is being affected by the pressures in society at the moment, whether it be mental or physical. The rate of cancer is rising, the rate of PTSD is through the roof, children's well-being is becoming such an important thing as well. So, you know, seeing the benefits of a woman who has taken this time a few months after I may have left them. I mean, we always whittle things down, so it's never cold turkey. And I can go, you know, a year to 18 months with some clients, just checking in. It's absolutely amazing, the confidence that women have got around the fact that they can then go back to work at a time that they have chosen, where they feel ready, rather than feeling that they've got to go back at this particular point. And I felt that that was massively influential when I was unwell, because I always felt this pressure that I had to go back to work. And so I started blogging and advocating for life after cancer, because the side effects of a diagnosis, whatever the treatment might be, are so far reaching. And having had a diagnosis so young, it's affected the rest of my life in one shape or another at different times. But I felt really passionately that women and people who have been poorly should, rather than feeling, I mean, it can be a real positive, of course it can, going back to work, getting that sense of new normal and a new normality back is so valid and it's so important. But also renaming that recovery time as not a weakness, but as a strength, and being able to say, no, I am actually investing in myself right now, because if I don't know what then comes and what then follows. And it's about listening, really listening to ourselves, to our bodies, and giving that time, because when we've got really full heads, and so many of us are living in our heads on a daily basis, that being able to then ground ourselves and reconnect with ourselves and listen to what our bodies really need, and ask ourselves that question, what do I need today? You know, should be a regular practice that we are not ashamed to do, and that we feel, you know, we don't have to do it every day, but at times where the chips are down and things can be really dark and challenging, we can say, I don't need that today, and feel empowered to reprioritize things that perhaps we hadn't done previously. And I think a cancer diagnosis, as well as becoming a mother, are hugely pivotal moments where we can make those decisions and really empower ourselves to say, no, I'm stopping right now, and I'm going to hibernate for a bit, and I'm going to step back, and it's okay. Things will manage without me, and then when I'm ready, I will be able to come back to that fresher, better equipped to deal with it, knowing that there won't be that time that I will regret I wasn't there enough for them. I didn't give myself enough time to recover. I didn't invest in that. I should have tried that when I had the chance. I rushed back to work because I had to. Well, it's changing the language and being able to give ourselves that choice.
I think as well, like a lot of mothers who have had a cancer diagnosis, and as you say, the pregnant or want to have a baby, they're grieving as well. They're grieving for what would have been a normal pregnancy or a normal childbirth and a normal fourth trimester. And I think that it's so important that they have that time to grieve. And you know, I myself, I had a similar situation. I was diagnosed in pregnancy, and you know, my treatment continued after my baby was born, and I missed out on so much. And even now, I'm 9 years down the line, and for me, I feel I'm still grieving, because it still breaks my heart. I couldn't breastfeed her, and there are so many things that I wish I could have done that was taken out of my control. And so I think when you've already got, you know, a new mum, or, you know, when someone's just had a baby, there are so many different things and emotions without a cancer diagnosis. So when you have that added in, it's so hard, and it can become so overwhelming. And yeah, it just, there are so many things going on, so many emotions, and it's a lot.
And the grief process is so personal as well.
Yeah.
You can't compare at all. I've had a client who had a real journey. She's quite well known. I'm not going to say her name, but she's very big on Instagram, and she had a real journey getting to motherhood. And it was much more of a complex fourth trimester and, you know, first year for her. And I've also had clients who I have supported through a pretty straightforward fourth trimester, first year, and then lost a baby. And that's huge. You know, it changes you completely and utterly, and you are not the same person. And that's why having maybe, you know, having someone there that listens without trying to fix it, because our family and friends love us so much that they just want to make it better. And often, you know, that's not how it works. And grief is something that is so complex and so, you know, ongoing, and changes form in so many ways at totally unpredictable times. And having been able to witness and support somebody or a few people going through that process is it's really humbling, and it's hard. It's really hard. And we do draw on our own strength, and we do draw on our own experiences as well to give us that empathy and that solidarity and sensitivity as well. But yeah, I mean, as you say, these times are so intense anyway, and then having a diagnosis on top of that, yeah, it's really challenging. So having that wall of support and people being able to offer different things at different times, I think is sort of a real kind of first step. I talk to a lot of people who have just been diagnosed, in terms of supporting them, you know, as a sort of, and dare I say, cancer doula. There is such a thing as death doulas now as well, who support grieving families and people who are you know, really poorly, and they know that they're not going to get any better, and that's yeah, it's hard. It's really hard, but it's really important to know that you've got people that can help you on different days with different things, and you know that you've got them to draw on. You know, it's not it takes a village, and it takes a village for cancer support as well. It's a team effort.
I've got a quick question, Sam, just in terms of practicality of it all. Obviously, this isn't something you do virtually, it needs to be face to face. So if we've got mums watching this, or anyone else, how do they go about finding a doula? How do they start that process? Could you just explain a little bit? Because obviously people are based all over the country.
Yeah, of course. So during lockdown, we did support online, and actually there is a real avenue for that. I've had a few clients who have just wanted emotional support and haven't been local, or it's been harder to meet. So there is the emotional support, I suppose, a bit more like a sort of therapist or a counsellor would do. But there are lots of networks. So Doula UK is the main body, and they have a what do you call it? I did write it down actually. Notes. They've got, I can't remember, my brain's gone blank, but they've oh yes, here we go. They've got an access fund, which is really, really brilliant service. And you can Google Doula UK, and on their website, they've got, you type in your postcode or your area, and it will come up with listed doulas, postnatal and birthing. Some do both, some just do one of the other. You can do doula shares, so you don't just have to have one. You can have a whole team if you want, that all offer different things and that will work happily together to provide the best type of support that client needs. There's also a website called Find My Doula, which does the same thing, and developing doulas, who I also train with, and I'm a doula mentor for them. So I help support other doulas who are training as they're coming through, which I absolutely love and is a huge part of the work I'm doing now as well. There's also conscious birthing, but if you just Google, how to find a doula, there will be probably quite a few, but I would definitely recommend Developing Doulas and Doula UK as the first ports of call. You will get a real sort of trusted doula from there. And I mean, there are many, and obviously with LGBT and all of those sort of communities that are absolutely entitled to that support as well. There are specialist doulas, especially in London, that will, be able to support in those more specific needs as well.
That's great, thank you. Has anyone else got any questions? Anyone that's on the call? Do you want to pop them in the chat if that's easier? I'll just have a quick look at the chat. Okay, well, I'm just going to stop the recording then, if that's okay.